Imagine, for some reason, the internet disappears tomorrow with no chance of ever coming back. What would happen? The first few hours would be confusing, but not immediately apocalyptic. Your lights would probably still work. Water would still come out of the tap. Cars would still run. But communication would collapse almost instantly. Messaging apps, social media, video calls, and most workplace systems would stop. For a lot of people, the first emotional reaction wouldn't even be fear. It would be irritation. Because as we've learned, modern panic often begins as inconvenience. Without the internet, information would become local again. You'd rely on television, radio, newspapers, word of mouth, which, historically speaking, is how humans spread information for most of civilization. Daily life would become slower almost immediately, because we don't just use the internet for entertainment like we used to. We use it almost like an external brain. Psychologists sometimes call this as cognitive offloading, which in simple terms is when we use tools to offload what we have in our own mind. Calendars remember appointments, GPS remembers directions, search engines remember facts. So if the internet vanished, we wouldn't just lose convenience. We'd lose a huge part of the system that helps us think, plan, remember, and help us feel in control. Money would be another major problem. Banking apps, card payments, online transfers, payroll systems, subscriptions, and business software all depend on internet-connected systems. Cash would suddenly matter again, a lot. Stores might still be open, but many would struggle to process payments. Supply chains would slow down. Inventory systems would fail. And because humans are extremely talented at making shortages worse by fearing shortages, panic buying would probably begin. Things like hospitals, airports, governments, and businesses wouldn't disappear, but many would be forced back onto older backups. Things like paper records, phone lines, radio systems, local networks, and manual procedures. Then there's the social side. At first, some people might feel relief. No notifications, no constant updates, no being available to everyone at all times. People might read, go outside, talk face to face. But then for some people, loneliness might set in, because the internet isn't just a distraction, it's connection. Long distance family and friends, online communities, support groups, and entire identities are built around being seen by people we may never meet in person. If the internet disappeared, a lot of people wouldn't just lose access to information, they would lose access to versions of themselves. But eventually, society would adapt. Radio would become important again. Printed maps would suddenly look a lot less like outdated glove box clutter and more like sacred texts. Libraries would again become useful in a way that made librarians look quietly smug, as they should. So what would happen if the internet disappeared? Well, turns out that question is less about technology and more about us. The internet didn't just change what we do, it changed what we expect. The internet is only a few decades old in its modern form, but it's already rewired the rhythm of civilization. It changed how we work, date, learn, shop, argue, remember. We like to think of the internet as something separate from real life, a place we go, a thing we use, a screen we can turn off. But the reality is that it isn't separate anymore. The scariest part about losing the internet isn't that we'd be losing access to information, it's that we'd realize how much of ourselves we started storing there. Anyway, if you've made it this far and you've realized how weird it is that you've watched this entire thing while on the internet, that's kind of the point. Liked what your weird brain just learned? Hit subscribe. If not, that's okay. We should probably all log off anyway.